I'm thankful for the confidence reposed in me, fully aware that this is an onerous role. I intend to discharge it to the best of my ability. Our duty as legislators is to ensure that we do all we can for the betterment of the people of Ghana. As leaders of the House, as a leader of the House, I have an abiding duty to ensure that we always stand on the side of Ghanaians. Right, Honorable Speaker, this is my charge to keep and a duty I will faithfully discharge. As leader of the House, I am committed to working hard to ensure that members work in an environment that is more conducive, convenient, and friendly. We are the representatives of the people of Ghana for a reason. Let us always be guided by this, that way we will carve a place for ourselves in the annals of our dear country.
And that's how we kickstart our big stories. This morning, there's a new look in the parliamentary leadership as far as the National Democratic Congress, the majority in parliament, is concerned. We'll be looking at the prospects of that. And the minority leader, Alexander Afenyo-Markin, has also called on the president to apologize to Ghanaians and just go beyond a number of 60 ministers. And the minority is urging the president to do that. But the president has promised to stick to the number 60 or less. But will the president bow to this pressure? And is the minority justified in its call? We'll be delving into these issues with our guests this morning. Joining us in the studio, we have Professor Kofi Mensah. He's a professor of marketing at the University of Ghana Business School. He's also a political marketing strategist. Then we have Dr. Rashid Draman, executive director of the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Both of them join the conversation this morning. Dr. Draman, I see you in the background. Good morning to you.
Morning.
All right. And Prof, thank you for joining the conversation.
Thanks so much, Ben. Let me just slightly make it correct. I'm an associate professor.
So associate professor. All right.
It's very important for me.
Thank you very much.
I'll just stick to Prof then. Prof, so let's get the conversation started.
I think we should start with Dr. Draman, since he may be...
Right. Doc, thank you for joining the conversation. I'm curious to know what your reflection would be on this new leadership we are seeing. How does it reflect the NDC's strategy to reset Ghana? Dr. Draman.
Is that for me or?
No, that's for you, Doc. Yeah, that's for you.
Yes. Sorry, my internet is quite unstable. I hope
it's okay. We'll manage it.
Enables the conversation. Yes. So I think resetting Ghana, for me, if I look at things from the perspective of Parliament, is, to ensure that we have a Parliament that is not overly partisan, a Parliament that will do the work of our country, a Parliament that is not going to be a rubber stamp because of the huge numbers that the NDC has, that would endorse everything that comes from the Jubilee House. And in the new look that we have in the leadership of Honorable Mama Yerga, I think we've heard him make a very clear statement about the fact that he's going to give space to the minority. Despite the dwindled numbers of the MPP, I think they have a very important role to play and they need to be given the space. So we want a leader or a leadership of the majority that will be tolerant, that will be open to criticism, that will be open to dialogue, and more importantly, that will be open to some negotiation, even if they can always have their way. So I think all these put together, for me, is what would give clear signal that we are serious about really resetting Ghana. I mean, if it becomes business as usual and we see a parliament that is always shouting in favor of the executive, then I guess this agenda for reset is in jeopardy.
I know that they all come with their own, individual strengths and weaknesses, but I want to focus on the gender bit for a second. You can talk about Mahama Yariga and his legal experience, George, his background in economic policies and all that. Nelson Dapiamokpo, we all know. But Comfort Doyo, that would be the Deputy Chief Whip. What unique perspective do you think she brings to the leadership now?
Well, I believe if you look at the entire front bench now, except for her, I think everybody is new. And again, also, I think we also have to remember inclusion is very, very important. In fact, I was even hoping that one of the women in parliament would be made one of the deputy speakers, but we didn't get that. Honorable Comfort Doyo's role, apart from the fact that, I mean, she has a lot of experience, having been part of the previous leadership, is the fact that she brings some continuity, especially perhaps to guide, I mean, all the other three men who are all new to this role, I mean, even if they are not new to parliament.
Thank you. Let's get into the studio. We'll circle back to you in a bit. Prof, what would be your initial reflection on these 5 members who are now the NDC's majority leadership in Parliament?
Well, thanks very much for that. Let me just put a caveat that I'm not a parliamentary, a politics student. And so usually I leave those spaces to my colleagues, especially Ali Jampo. They are very much expert in them. But let me say that I could perhaps hazard some kind of opinion. If you look at, I mean, those that are at the front now, in terms of the NDC leadership you're talking about. Oh,
yes, majority. Yeah.
Exactly. So if you look at them, I mean, Mama Yariga, fantastic guy. He's been, obviously a member of parliament for so long. And of course, his connection with, the outgone ones. I'm sure once you're in parliament, you'll be learning from them. They're your colleagues. You have opportunity to tap into their knowledge. Obviously, within the role, he would also have a wise counsel from the previous one. So I think that given their political competency, and I choose the word political competency for a reason, the idea that they have been able to maintain a certain stable, constituency within the party hierarchy itself, and of course the grassroots, I think would give them the needed expertise to steer the affairs of the party in parliament. And of course, with that particular awareness of the position that they're in terms of the expectation of the country, on the wider political party NDC, as well as the parliamentary performance. If you listen to most of the conversations that they've been having, they said that the 8th parliament was perhaps one of arguably the best parliament they could have.
Arguably.
Of course, that would mean that the leadership did something wrong, something right, all right? Then, of course, the expectation is higher for you, because if arguably was the best parliament, then your tenure shouldn't be the one that would be faulted as maybe
you shouldn't lower the standards.
Of course not. So I think that it places a lot of burden on them. But of course, they're in a very good hands because these are stellar politicians.
Okay, Ben.
I mean, interesting thoughts you've espoused so far, and we can just wish them the very best. In fact,
absolutely,
the likes of Roxanne Nelson Dapiamekpo got a baptism of fire yesterday because Afenyo Markin was on them right from the start that there's no time to cool off. With your people, call your people to order. But that point, Dr. Draman, had to do with the majority side not being very present in Parliament, a.k.a. absenteeism. In fact, we have a sound on that. I want you to listen to it. That's the minority leader, and then we'll come and reflect on that.
Yeah, there are empty seats. The chief whip should observe all the empty seats and
advise us whether in the circumstance we can put a question. They should get the chamber populated. They say they are super majority. They should let their people come. Mr. Speaker, I'm advising them, with all these empty seats, we want them to be in so that we'll meet the necessary requirements of law so that we can put the question. We are ready to help you. We are ready.
And indeed, Mr. Speaker, on several occasions, civil society organizations, the media and the rest have had the occasion to discuss at great length the attendance of members of parliament to the business of the House. Mr. Speaker, we are here this afternoon conducting extremely serious business. Mr. Speaker, we are here as an arm of government to exercise our constitutional mandate in supporting the president to constitute his government. And Mr. Speaker, indeed, we are here to approve 3 very important ministers: the Minister for Local Government, the Minister for Trade and Industry, the Minister for Gender. And Mr. Speaker, let me say that it is refreshing that all 3 of them are here. But the majority benches and seats are empty. Mr. Speaker, empty. Empty. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, on December, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, on December 7th, Mr. Speaker, on December 7th, Mr. Speaker, on December 7th, Ghanaians queued and voted for 275 members of parliament. 183 of them are members of the majority side. They are not here. Mr. Speaker, they are not here. Mr. Speaker, look at the minority side. They are always happy. They are always happy to erroneously, Mr. Speaker, they are always happy to erroneously refer to us. They are always happy to erroneously refer to us as micro-minority. But Mr. Speaker, this minority will be in this house every day and conduct our business and perform our responsibility. Mr. Speaker, that is why I refer you to Order 64. Order 64, Rule 4 of our standing orders. Mr. Speaker, and before I even quote the said order, Mr. Speaker, this minority, Mr. Speaker, and I refer to this the minority of this 9th parliament, the effective minority.
So you heard the minority leader, Alexander Afenyo-Markin, legislator for Efutu, and then you heard also the former Lands and Natural Resources Minister, John Abu Jinapo. All of them expressing, Samuel Abu Jinapo, I beg your pardon, also expressing their thoughts there. But Dr. Draman, if you look at the numbers, there seems to be a trend, especially for new MPs. They will be diligent, come to Parliament. After a while, they learn from some of the others, and then it will become today, maybe not be in there tomorrow. What do you see when it comes to this issue of absenteeism? And perchance, is the majority thinking we have so many numbers, so we can decide to show up when we choose? Your take. Dr. Draman.
I think this is very, very disturbing. Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, please.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yes, I was saying that this is quite disturbing, especially starting at this, very early, days of the 9th Parliament. What the NDC would need to remember is that I think it's not just a question of numbers, because when you look at the history of our country, I think one of the effective parliaments that we've had was I think the 2nd or 3rd parliament, when minority in the House, and they put up a very, very kind of effective oversight and effective efforts to hold the government of the day accountable. And if the NDC thinks that they have the numbers, I think they have to go back and revise their notes, because I am seeing in this minority that they are leaving nothing to chance. And when you have a situation of a supermajority, I think what works for a minority is when they have citizens of the country behind them. And I think that is the direction the MPP is headed. Now, let me come to the issue of absenteeism. I would just appeal to the leadership of Parliament, because we've talked about this over and over and over. The time to crack the whip, I believe, is now. I hope with the new standing orders, and I hope with the leadership of the Right Honorable Speaker, something will be done about this. Otherwise, again, going back to the reset agenda is just going to be a mirage, because we would have the minority show up and the majority will be absent, particularly at this very important moment when you are approving ministers to lead a country that is on its knees. I mean, we are on our knees as a country in terms of the challenges that we face. And I mean, I think I can't just comprehend why, I mean, this kind of pictures you are showing us on the screen, that members of Parliament that we are paying to show up and work would not show up. Are they at the Jubilee House lobbying for positions, or where are they? Where exactly are they? I think that that's a question that we need answered as Ghanaians.
And Doc, just stepping away from the absenteeism bit for a bit, we have approved 12 ministers so far. What's your thoughts on those approvals and the ones we are still waiting to see? What are your thoughts on the ministers who've been approved?
Thoughts in terms of the process? Well, I think His Excellency the President has made his choice. I think they are all, I mean, members of Parliament. We've seen them perform in the 8th Parliament and so on. Whether they will do same and perform in the various ministries that they are going to go, I think is another question. We saw that the process leading to their approval, in my opinion, has not been a rigorous process. We have a lot of challenges in our country leading to the massive kind of endorsement that Ghanaians gave the NDC. And we see at the appointments committee during confirmation hearings, a minority sometimes that gets distracted and focuses on issues that are not related to the nominees, i.e., the minority leader, takes the stage before Honorable Abuja and then, gets into an issue that took the committee about 2 hours or so, to get back to the main issue at stake. And you have a majority that often will hear, I don't have any questions for you, I endorse you. I find that, quite disturbing because, you can ask a question of a nominee to bring out the best of the person. Asking a question doesn't necessarily mean, the various sectors of our economy have serious challenges. So I get worried when I hear members of the majority side treating their colleagues with kids' gloves, saying, I don't have a question, I endorse you. Please, we have problems in this country, and I think the committee would have to really relook its approach to how these confirmations are unfolding. But having said that, I think we would only wish those who have been approved and sworn in the best, so that at least they can do the business of our country. And like Honorable Mama Yerga has said, their focus is going to be serving the Ghanaian people.
Doc, it appears the whole vetting process and approval is quite ceremonial because there's never really been a time where any minister designate goes through the vetting process and didn't get approved, whether or not their responses were impressive. And I'm just wondering, should we be looking at strengthening that system so that we can actually prune those who are competent from the vetting committee? Should we be reviewing that process?
Yes, indeed. I think we need to strengthen that. Yes, we need to review that process because the whole idea of, confirmation is, try to answer the basic question. Are these people of integrity? Can we trust them to be accountable when they are given the mandate and the resources that they will be given as ministers or public officers? And like you said, in the history of our country, it's almost as if once you go through, once the president nominates you, I think you are almost 90% sure that you get through. I mean, in the 8th Parliament, I think a lot of people criticize the NDC, and that was the first test that the NDC failed. That is the test of holding those who were nominated by His Excellency, the President at the time, holding them accountable. They had all kinds of issues about a lot of nominees, yet the nominees showed up before the committee and eventually get passed. So when you talk about the 8th Parliament, usually that's the low point that people will talk about. I mean, how Parliament, particularly the minority at the time, failed to ensure that those they had issues with never got the nod to be ministers. So this whole process would need to be taken a very serious look at, so that at least we know that when you are nominated by His Excellency the President, you have to make sure that you do your best, and Parliament also has to make sure that the best is done, so that we don't have this omnibus kind of approvals. Otherwise, like you said, it becomes ceremonial, and eventually nobody is going to take the process seriously.
Dr. Draman, just give me a minute more of your time. I want you to listen, and I know you followed. Afenyo Markin, the minority leader, has called on President John Dramani Mahama to increase his number of ministers from 60. Here's why. Let's listen to it.
We have passed a law in this House. That law makes it mandatory to have a ministry for national security. I refer to Act 1030. We've had so many appointments, but we are yet to hear of minister designate for national security. Only yesterday or so, we got this notice from Mr. President about the Interior Minister designate. Mr. Speaker, we will do our part, but they must also do their part so that we don't create certain impressions. Mr. Speaker, that said, the number of ministers. We are seeing Minister for Local Government and Chieftaincy Affairs. The political class of this country must be bold and own the political narrative. I will not criticize because I am in opposition. When we make mistakes, let's admit them and apologize. 60 ministers will not help your political cause. But when civil society comes out with the narrative, as if everything is done by the political class, instead of us boldly explaining to them the intricacies of politics, then we also fall for the trap and we make political commitment. I don't doubt the competence of Honorable Ahmed Ibrahim, but that huge ministry, local government, and chieftaincy, all these conflicts, the behind the scenes, negotiations for peace, and local governance. Mr. Speaker, I am not the president, but if I were to advise Mr. President, I would say, Mr. President, you can apologize to Ghanaians and say, look, you underestimated the thing. I think I need to engage more ministers. Because, Mr. Speaker, we cannot allow this.
And because we have to take leave of Dr. Draman, I'll just go to him briefly and then we'll have more time in the studio. Dr. Draman, you heard the minority leader there. This morning in the course of the news review, Andrew Appiah Dankwa, who is spokesperson for the Movement for Change, called this act by Afenyo Markin mischief. We also know that Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, the former vice president, had promised in his campaign to have 50 ministers with the support of the minority leader. How do you react to his comments then, Dr. Draman?
Well, I mean, I don't know what his comments are born out of. I mean, I hear him talk about national security and then the huge portfolio given to Honorable Ahmed Ibrahim. Again, maybe I would also follow the path of the person that you quoted earlier to say, is it a political trap? So that His Excellency the President will go back on his word, and then the opposition would now have maybe a song to say, you know, this is what they promised and this is what they are delivering. I think if you look at, you know, what is happening around us and around the world, I mean, we can even really do with, I mean, less than 60 ministers. So really, I don't think that the leader has very much in terms of substance. Maybe it has political substance, but not otherwise. I mean, that would be my take.
Doc, right before you go, do you think the minority are doing too much already too soon? Especially the leader, the minority leader. Are they doing too much too soon?
Well, I think yes, and we want to see them do a lot more. Okay. I think, I mean, I want to see them hold the NDC, to a lot of fire. I mean, they are our hope in terms of making sure that this supermajority is kept in check. If we lose, you know, the fire that is in them, then I think this country is in trouble, because we're already seeing signs that really, if we are not careful, we are not going to see any oversight from the NDC side. So the MPP, despite its small number in Parliament, I believe is our hope in terms of making sure that this huge supermajority is kept in check.
Dr. Draman, just a quick, interesting thought on the back of what Sweetie asked. In doing so, though, they probably will be helping to retain the NDC in power, will they not?
In doing what? In holding them to account?
In holding them to account. Of course, by holding them to account, they will keep them under pressure to do what they have promised. And by doing what they have promised, inadvertently, the NPP would be helping the NDC to stay in power. Wouldn't it be the case?
Well, I mean, it can be looked at in two ways, because we are going to see a minority, usually that is supposed to be the government in waiting, I mean, prove their worth. And in that process, even if NDC, I mean, does well, it will be at the instance of the work that the minority has done, okay. And perhaps Ghanaians might reward them. If they don't do anything, that is even worse, because then Ghanaians will say, this cannot be a trusted government in waiting. So I think, I mean, they would rather err on the side of holding the government to account, because then they can endear themselves to all of us, and we would maybe have second thoughts when we go to the ballot, I mean, in the next 4 years.
All right. Dr. Draman, we are very grateful for your time.
I have to go, unfortunately.
Yes, and we're very grateful, in fact, for your time. That is Dr. Rashid Draman of the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. And in the studio, Professor Kobi Mensah, we've discussed a whole lot. I'll let Sweetie usher you in, because there's a whole lot to digest.
Yeah, but I want to start from the same points. Are they doing too much, do you think? I mean, does it even lie in their hands to tell the president to apologize to Ghanaians? And
Firstly, I think that Afenyo probably must be careful before he creates a minority of one person. I mean, currently as we speak, he's the only image in your mind since this process has started. He's the only person you can see talking. And that is a very dangerous path to create for a political party in terms of imagery, all right? I mean, I'm a political brand person, so I can tell when you are too dominant, you sort of replaces the party's image with your image, and it becomes a one-man majority. You don't want that, right? So you should probably balance it. Let other people take the podium as opposed to he alone being the one speaking. And I think that it's a catch-22 council. I think it's a very deliberate attempt to get the president commit to what they want in order that they can bash them. All right, just like a former
So in other words,
president,
it's a trap.
It's a trap. I mean, former President Kufuor said, "I didn't know. If I knew, I wouldn't have said 88, etc." I mean, this is a political strategy, to get the president commit, as if you're advising, but you know what you're looking for. Immediately, President Mahama sees to that, the trust issues start beginning. I mean, we start, undermining, or we start undermining his positioning. So I don't think that they should buy into it. I don't think Mahama will buy into that.
And in any way, what's the locus? Because like I mentioned, his party's flag bearer in the last election had even 10 less.
Exactly,
50.
exactly. And that actually brings into the question. You were part of that particular campaign. He was at the center of Bawumia's campaign. If you had that perspective, and which you can't say you didn't have that because you've been in politics for so long, you've been an MP for so long, you have been in government, all right? So you absolutely understand the enormity of the job. You understand the complexity of the job. So at a time when Bawumia actually promised the 50, what did you say in chambers?
Yeah.
Did you tell him that the complexity cannot allow you? Look, I had spoken to Jacob Echebilam, of blessed memory. I've spoken to Odoy Sykes. And they tell me on the campaign, sometimes the presidential candidate can make a promise and they go and say, but we haven't discussed this. So no, I have to cheer up the people, all right? There's that tendency. Yeah. But when that happens, all right, do you then push it as a policy, or do you then tell them that, no, we can't proceed on this tangent, let's tone down on this?
This became a manifesto promise.
Exactly. So are you being honest or dishonest with Ghanaians? Because if you were honest, then you could have actually advised your candidates then that we can't do 50.
But
because the same complexity.
Him, it could also be that he expressed his disapproval, but the bigger
and
party
he has to demonstrate.
To go with 50.
He has to demonstrate because Bawumia actually faced the same problem, all right? He said, in cabinet, I oppose this, I oppose that. Where is the evidence? From my training, what we do is leaking, all right? You could leak certain information through certain informal structures to demonstrate your position to a certain decisions that you think would look bad on you.
Yeah.
You never leaked? I mean, we don't know that you leaked.
Do you think...
There was no leak, from cabinet. Yeah. So you were actually part and parcel of that particular decision. So we haven't had any leak that Afenya had opposed to 50. Did you hear anything? No.
That I heard.
So you can't come in now and say, due to the complexity. We didn't become complex in the last, few weeks. We've been complex.
Do you think this mischief, do you think he won when it comes to the appointments committee? Because it was the composure of Afenyomarkin that brought the competence of Ahiafo under question. Do you think that the strategy of, maybe revealing the incompetencies or just, setting a trap for them to fail?
I don't think that he brought a certain incompetency of somebody else. I mean, if you are disruptive, it does not make the other person incompetent.
Okay.
I mean, people have their personalities.
So Afenyo is being
disruptive.
It's been disruptive, and it doesn't mean that the other guy is incompetent. I mean, we have our own personality. Some people are very outward. Some people are very, calm in nature, etc. I mean, at some point, people thought that Kufuor wasn't a good, public speaker. But it turned out to be his strength, isn't it? So you couldn't actually say that because the other guy is calmer and is able to, sort of speak within scope, means that he's incompetent. It's your disruption.
Okay.
So it depends on how you perceive.
Let me bring in the bit about letters that were sent out recently. This morning, there was some talk about that letters were being sent to people who had already resigned. I don't know whether you've caught a whiff of that. Any quick thoughts on that? Because some people feel, listen, you must show that you are very effective, efficient, sending letters to people who have resigned from the
I suppose it's purely public administration. Perhaps my deal would be better to tell. Dean Bawale is a public administrator, so you can tell exactly what the nuances are. But I suppose they know better than we do, because some people might say that they've resigned, but there could be some other public administrative mechanisms that does not necessarily mean that because they have issued a letter of resignation, they've resigned. So maybe the administration knows something different that we do. And so they still have to go ahead by issuing the letter. And don't forget, those resignations, some of them, we haven't seen it as public, isn't it?
Right.
So we probably, or there could be a certain, symbolic, tone to it as well, that the public must know that you're no longer occupying this position.
In talking about letters, the Chief of Staff sent one round saying that everyone who was employed after 6th December, they should account for their name, their employee identification number. In a way, they want to understand what really
I fully agree.
There. You agree with that?
I fully agree. You see, the previous administration, just like in the past, do a lot of stuff, all right? They push in people at the letter end so that they could actually seize the structures. Obviously, yeah, they're Ghanaians, they're supposed to, but a lot of people have been pushed into the system irregularly, all right?
And that increases your wage
of
burden
course.
as well.
So they have every right to actually audit that particular practice. I mean, people say don't do equalization, but if you go down 2016, you saw what MPP did, all right? Immediately they came, they just rubbished almost everybody that was employed, including somebody I know who was actually given an appointment letter to head an institution. They revoked it immediately, all right? So for me, those people actually condemn it. And I always say that stand on principle. When you stand on principle, you can't change it. What did you say then? And what are you saying now? Do you get it? We have so many people who are sycophants, we have so many people who are not principled.
There you have that letter actually on the screen with the different details in there. Request for information on payroll. And it talks about, in line with ongoing efforts to ensure the accuracy and integrity of government's payroll records under the John Mahama administration, I'm writing to request your assistance in providing information to staff who have been added to your institution's payroll since Saturday, the 7th of December 2024. That's the day of the inauguration. You are kindly requested to submit the following details for each staff member added with the specified period: full name, designation number or job title, employment identification number, if applicable, date of appointment, date added to payroll, and it goes on and on. But from where you sit, and it's signed by the Chief of Staff himself, Julius.
Yeah, I think that, you see, the country shouldn't leave these administrative things to politics, all right? We probably have to find a better way of doing this. Obviously, there are administrators who handle employment, who handle, dismissals, who handle all these things. Unfortunately, we have left it to the hands of politicians, and we have abused the system. And so politicians have to take these measures in order that they themselves will feel secure.
Two things. On the back of just mentioning the word abuse, some would say maybe we should fetter governments so that if you've lost an election, in that window of about 3 weeks, 1 month, don't make appointments.
I think so.
That is what some people would say. But others too would quickly tell you that the Constitution gives power to the president. And until midnight of the 6th of January, he is still the president and he can make appointments. What do you think we can do about it?
Yeah, I agree. But there are some certain appointments that are purely administrative. All right. It shouldn't be the president in appointing. I don't believe that it should be the president appointing CEOs. Yeah. I mean, we have actually let this seem to the very ground. Very soon, I have always said that very soon we're going to have the military being replaced or being appointed, by a certain government. So you're going to have a whole military set going up, because you don't even have people who are manning toilets, sorry to say, actually being replaced because of a change of government. Why should it be like that? You see, so for me, I think that it is wrong for us to leave the system. But unfortunately, the system had come to stay. And that's why we're seeing what we're seeing. Otherwise, a certain government won't come in and say, submit to me list of people you have employed, all right? It wouldn't have happened like that. But we saw what MPP did in 2016. Very terrible experiences people went through. And so if the current administration is doing it, you have no justification. If you didn't question 2016, for you to question now. I think that perhaps I'm hoping that by this president, certain administrative things could be put in place so that we can end it. But I don't have any trouble with them questioning and asking a certain documentation on those who were employed. I don't have any qualms about it because people did it and people were shot. I saw Yusuf, the sports minister, complaining that his house or whatever. And I'm saying, why are you complaining? When 2016, your own government did that. What did you say? On record, we didn't see you complain. Why are you now complaining?
Right.
You have to be principled. If you kept quiet those days, you have to keep quiet now.
Okay.
Unless we have a certain systems to put in place, because you can't change. You can't tell me that you change because you are the other side.
But something we're definitely not going to be quiet on is this new thing you've brought forward, applications and the new development. I mean, we celebrate you for that, sweetie. I'm sure you're as curious as I am about.
Yes, I wanted to jump the gun, but you take this and then I'll come back to wrap up. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Prof, so tell us a bit about your app. What is it?
Okay.
What does it seek to achieve? What's the end game?
Well, as a lecturer, I'm very much concerned about students' well-being, right, and their opportunities. Now, if you look at the admission processes in this country, people buy about 3-4 forms. Even when we were actually coming through, we also buy a lot of forms, all right? That gives a lot of pressure. It puts a lot of pressure on parents, especially those at the very lowest of incomes. And so I'm saying that, no, we have to put a stop to that. So I actually, through my marketing lenses, thought about a process that I could actually develop, a concept that I could develop to help parents, to help students, to be very realistic, and to also have a confidence in the application process. So what we're saying is that from SS1, every term, when you get your results, you can actually go into admission checker and put your results in and ask yourself, should I get this result in my final year and I want to do business administration, would I get this admission? The system will tell you, yes, based on your performance, you have 80%, 70% or 20% chance. If you have 20% chance, then you know that you are not likely to get your...
So the system has certain variables
exactly,
that will be used to measure...
We have actually developed algorithms, based on the requirements, about 70 universities and about 2,000 plus courses. All right, that the system work against.
Does it align with the school selection placement?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Right.
So immediately you know that your ward cannot get a course that you're looking for, then you have to let them prepare. I mean, start improving.
So this even prevents you start knowing right from
exactly.
the start. And if you have to do more, you know.
Absolutely. So if you put in and it says, oh, business administration, you have 90% chance, then you know that if you maintain this effort, obviously making sure that you can still do continuous improvement. Even if you had 100%, those days in school, they say more room for improvement.
Yeah.
But if you have a lower mark, then you know that you have to put in more. Some people are deceived by those days, issues. For example, these days people think, if you got aggregate 15, 20, you can do nursing. I'm afraid no. In the University of Ghana, nursing is about aggregate 6 and 7. Can you imagine that?
Yeah. So
it means that if you get 15, if you get 10, you're not going to get in. But people still hold on to those days thinking that, 8, 10, maybe you can get that. You can't. So if you use admission checker, it can tell you realistically what courses and what universities. And also we say that there are more universities. I mean, 70 plus universities, university colleges, technical universities, etc. So don't put too much pressure on some of the institutions that everybody wants to go. If you want to do medicine, for example, UHAS has a fantastic,
True.
I mean, medicine is same standard because the human body is same standard. So every school that does medicine, you should expect that they have same standard, all right? So you can go to even the new ones like UHAS or UDS, and you'll be successful. So in admission checker, whilst Legon says, we don't have space, although you qualify, why don't you apply to UHAS, for example? So we are trying to help people to be realistic and to find opportunities where they think there are no opportunities. And that's why we developed that app, Admission Checker. And a lot of parents have actually experienced it and sent messages that it really helped them.
Is there a plan to integrate this into the schools? I mean,
I'm hoping to meet the Minister for Education and then tell him that, look, we can help the students
when he gets through,
to get prepared, And I think it's a good thing that we have to innovate to solve our own problems. We don't have to wait for foreigners.
But congratulations once more. It's a good initiative.
Thank you, Ben.
Yes, no, that's it for me. But I was talking about jumping the gun. There was a question I wanted to bring to your attention. You know that we have ministry PROs who are on government payroll, who are paid huge sums of money, and sometimes they even fall under the category of directors. So they have cars, some allowances, and all that. But you never really hear of them. Take the Ministry of Education, for example, the biggest budget that goes into that ministry. I have never heard of the PRO. Just yesterday it came up in the newsroom that there's actually a PRO.
Of course.
All we hear is Kwesi Kwarteng, who came in with a team, with the NPP's team. What does this mean for the business of government and how we're paying so much money for redundancies?
Yeah, I think that not only in the government sector, even the broader society, a lot of people, a lot of companies, CEOs are not even allowing the PR people, those who are equipped with the skills and expertise.
They are speaking themselves.
They're speaking themselves. I don't know why. And people think, it's because people think that talking, it's easy. It's a lived experience, all right? People don't see. I tell people that, look, I cannot discuss geography with you or weather because do you hear people discussing weather? Because they don't think that it's an expertise they have. But people will discuss football and think that they're experts in coaching, right? Yeah. People will discuss politics and they think that they're experts in them. The same way people think that talking is easy, so they can talk. No, people...
there are a lot of people who feel, they are better suited to do what we...
Exactly.
They say it all the time.
That's the trap. Look, communication...
If I could, someday I would allow...
Exactly, but communication is a science. People go to school to learn that. And so if somebody has learned PR, don't be quick to speak as a CEO. Get your PR to speak because they understand the technicalities, the science behind, appealing, persuading, etc. They know crisis communication. The idea that you are CEO doesn't mean that in crisis you have to speak. No, that's why the PR is there. So you're right in observing that. Not only government, but majority of the society think that they can speak, and so they have actually always pushing the PR guys by. Let the PR guys do their work. They can handle the situations better, and they can make you look good. You're supposed to come in when it's critical, for you to speak. But good observation.
Well,
I think the PRs should...
So the ministry should let the
PRs speak.
Oh, well, maybe the government...
They should earn their pay.
Oh, well, they should end the pay. Yeah, I think I said it that way.
Absolutely.
His wages, as the Bible would say.
Yeah.
But it's been a refreshing
conversation.
You don't have to respond to this. I had a message coming from Eric Ametokwame who says, good morning, Mr. Akakpo. Is it right for a government which has just taken over government with such heavy indebtedness to be saddled with more payroll burden without reference to the new Minister of Finance who is yet to take office? And I think I brought it up in the bit about, last minute.
I suppose once you've been given the mandate, you should find a way of dealing with the problems that the country faces. So definitely they have the right to solve the issues. But of course, they also have to investigate and make sure that people who have been put in places illegally are actually dealt with.
All right. We'd like to say a big thank you to our guests this morning. We had Dr. Rashid Draman. He is with the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. We also had Associate Professor Kobi Mensah of the University of Ghana Business School. He is a marketing strategist. And before we take a breather and bring you, blunt thoughts, and the title today is The Baggage of the Past and the Promise of the Future, Navigating the Maze of What Is to Come. The baggage of the past and the promise of the future, navigating the maze of what is to come. You don't want to miss it because I'm going to give you some information that you don't know of this morning. But sweetie.
I was just going to say, I can't wait to hear you, Ben. Benjamin. But right before we go, I do want to remind you to select a solar system from our various solar packages ranging from 30,000 Ghana cedis to 99,000 Ghana cedis. All our solar systems come with lithium-ion battery. So get a solar water heater, a solar home system, a solar power station, or a solar generator ranging from 1,000 watts to 20,000 watts. We also sell reverse osmosis machines for water treatment. Google SolarMate Ghana to find us on both Facebook and on Instagram. How do you contact us? SolarMate Ghana. Call us on 050-832-0470. SolarMate Ghana is located at Adringano, East Legon. SolarMate, we go everywhere. Please stay. There's so much more action coming your way, including Benjamin's Plant Thoughts on the AM show.